A very good afternoon to you all. Moving further, we will try to understand the stem cell method, that is embryonic stem cell method, in establishing transgenic mice. So as you all know, the cells from the blastocyst stage of a developing mouse embryo, it can proliferate in cell culture and it can still retain the capability of differentiating into all other cell types. That means when I say all other cell types, it includes germ-line cells. So such cells, after they are introduced into another blastocyst embryo, they are called pluripotent embryonic stem cells. So when in the culture, these embryonic stem cells can be readily engineered without altering their pluripotency. So this is an important point that has to be remembered. So the cells from the blastocyst stage of a developing mouse can proliferate in cell culture, and when in cell culture, the embryonic stem cells can be engineered without altering their pluripotency. With such a system, say for example, a functional transgene can be integrated at a specific site within a dispensable gene in the genome of embryonic stem cells. At a later stage, these genetically engineered cells can be selected, they can be grown and used to generate transgenic animals. So as you can see in the figure that is given over there, a functional transgene can be integrated at a specific site. Then the genetically engineered cells can be selected, they can be grown and used to generate transgenic animals. So in this way, the randomness of integration that is inherent with the DNA microinjection and retroviral vector systems is avoided. So the randomness of integration, which is an inherent property with the DNA microinjection and the retroviral vector systems that we have studied in the previous session, it can be avoided. Right. So after transfection of embryonic stem cells in culture with a DNA vector that is designed to integrate within a specific chromosomal location, and some cells will have the DNA integrated at non-target sites. We call these sites as spurious sites, and in other cells the integration will occur at the target site or the correct site. But in most of the embryonic stem cells, the input DNA will not be integrated at all. Right. So what to do? To enrich for the cells with DNA integrated at the target site, a procedure is adopted which is called the positive negative selection. So this procedure is implemented. So what is happening is, in some cells the DNA integrate at non-target or the spurious sites, and in other cells the integration will occur at the target site or the correct site. But in most of the embryonic stem cells, the DNA or the input DNA will not be integrated. To enrich for the cells with DNA integration specifically at the target site, that is the objective, we implement a positive negative selection procedure. Right. Now, what is this positive negative selection procedure is all about? This strategy uses positive selection of cells that have vector DNA integrated anywhere in their genomes, and negative selection against the vector DNA sequence that is integrated at non-target or the spurious sites. Okay. So, what does this strategy use? Uses the positive selection for cells that have vector DNA integrated anywhere in their genomes, and negative selection against the vector DNA sequence that is integrated at the non-target or the spurious sites. So, the target site should be located in the section of genomic DNA that encodes no essential products, so that the integration of the input DNA does not encounter any interference with any developmental or cellular functions. So, when you choose a target site, it should be in such a way that the location should be in a section of genomic DNA that encodes no essential products, so that after integration of the input DNA, there should not be any interference with the development or the cellular functions. Right. So, you should select such a site for the integration or input of the DNA. And moreover, it is essential that the transgene be integrated into a part of the genome that does not prevent it from being transcribed. So, these are some of the fundamental points that has to be taken care of. The transgene should be integrated into part of the genome, and it should not prevent the transgene from being transcribed. Okay. So, if you just carefully look at the figure of positive and negative selection, a targeting DNA vector for the positive negative selection procedure usually contains, number 1, 2 blocks of DNA sequences. Here it is labeled as HB1 and HB2. Carefully try to follow and understand how the procedure is implemented. A targeting vector DNA for the positive negative selection procedure usually contains, this is the target DNA vector which undergoes positive negative selection procedure. It usually contains 2 blocks of DNA sequences which are labeled here as HB1 and HB2 that are homologous to separate regions of the target site. Okay. And number 2, the transgene which is labeled as TG. Now, this will confer a new function on the recipient. That is what we are interested in. And number 3, a DNA sequence that codes for resistance to the compound or drugs, a neomycin resistant or the G418. And number 4, 2 different genes for thymidine kinase which is labeled as TK1 and TK2. So, they are from the herpes simplex virus type 1 and type 2, that is HSV TK1 and HSV TK2. And the arrangement of these sequences is a key to the positive negative selection procedure. It is not only about containing the regions, that is the DNA sequences which are homologous and the transgene and a sequence for resistance to the drug. It is also about the arrangement of these sequences for the positive negative selection procedure. So carefully observe that between the two blocks of DNA that are homologous to the target sites are the genes for the transgene and G418 resistance, that is neomycin resistance gene. So between HB1 and HB2 you can find the TG and the neomycin resistant gene, that is G418 resistance gene. That is between these two blocks of DNA that are homologous to the target site, you find the transgene as well as the neomycin resistant gene. Outside of each of the homologous blocks, that is on the either side, there are the genes for the thymidine kinase 1 and the thymidine kinase 2 on the either side. Now, if integration occurs at a random site or the non-target or the spurious site, that is not at HB1 and HB2, right? Our interest is the integration should occur at HB1 and HB2. If the integration occurs at a non-target site, that is other than HB1 and HB2, then either one or both of the thymidine kinase gene has a high probability of being integrated along with the other sequences. Okay. Alternatively, if the integration event is due to the homologous recombination at the target site by double crossover, then the thymidine kinase genes will be excluded and only the transgene and the neomycin resistant gene will be incorporated into the genome. You can observe it in figure B. So when transfected cells are grown in the presence of the drug neomycin, all the cells that lack the neomycin resistant gene will be killed and only those cells with integrated DNA will survive. So these cells are positively selected. So the procedure is very easy to follow. So if the integration occurs at non-target sites, that is other than HB1 and HB2, then the thymidine kinase gene has a high probability of being integrated along with other sequences. But or alternatively, if the integration occurs at HB1 and HB2, then the thymidine kinase genes will be excluded and only the transgene and neomycin gene will be incorporated into the genome. Thus, the cells which survive or show resistance to the drug G418 or the neomycin, such cells are positively selected. Right? And if the compound, that is ganciclovir, so another drug, if it is added at the same time as we add the G418, then those cells that express thymidine kinase will be killed. Now these cells are negatively selected. Right? So you can use two types of drugs to implement the positive selection and negative selection. So if you add the ganciclovir at the same time as you add the neomycin, then those cells that express thymidine kinase will be killed. Which are the cells that are expressing the thymidine kinase? If the integration occurs at a non-target or the spurious site. If thymidine kinase genes are excluded, then the cells will be positively selected. Right? Because thymidine kinase, what happens in negative selection? Why the cells that express thymidine kinase will be killed? Thymidine kinase converts the ganciclovir to toxic compound. So this in turn kills the cells. The cells are mostly likely to survive this dual selection, right? So although there is no full proof evidence, the positive negative selection method enriches, definitely it enriches the embryonic stem cell population for cells that carry a transgene at a specific chromosomal location. Definitely it provides a hope that the embryonic stem cell population for cells that carry a transgene at a specific chromosomal location. Right. Now, how to go about testing of non-specific integration and homologous recombination? A more direct way to detect the embryonic stem cells that carry a transgene at a targeted chromosomal site is to use the PCR method, that is polymerase chain reaction method. This is a more direct way of detecting the ES cells, that is embryonic stem cells that carry a transgene at a targeted chromosomal site. So the earlier method what we saw was an indirect approach through positive negative selection. A direct approach is to use the polymerase chain reaction method. So in this case, what happens? The targeting DNA vector contains two blocks of DNA that are homologous to the target site, similar to the previous method, with one on either side of both the transgene. To just carefully observe the figure, you will make out the HB1 location and the HB2 location. The targeting DNA vector containing two blocks of DNA that are homologous to the target site, that is HB1 and HB2, with one on either side of the transgene and a cloned bacterial or synthetic DNA sequence that is absolutely not present in the mouse genome, a specific unique sequence. Now, after transfection of the embryonic stem cells, now the cells are pooled and screened by PCR. So, what do you do in PCR here? One of the primers, that is, we'll label it as the primer 1 for the PCR, is complementary to a sequence within the cloned bacterial or synthetic DNA sequence of the integrating vector. Now, what is the role of this unique sequence? You have a primer for that sequence, right? So, the cells which are after transfection are pooled and they are screened by the PCR method by using the primers, which is complementary to a sequence within the cloned bacterial or synthetic DNA sequence of the integrating vector, right? The other is complementary to a DNA sequence that is part of the chromosome adjacent to the region of one of the homologous blocks of DNA. Now, if integration is at a random site, then the predicted amplified DNA product will not be synthesized. If the DNA integration is at a random site, then the predicted amplified DNA product will not be synthesized, as you can see in figure A. If site-specific integration occur, then the PCR amplifies a target, that is DNA fragment of known size, as you can see in the figure B. So in this way, the pool of cells with embryonic stem cells containing the desired gene at the targeted site can be identified. So what is essentially we are trying to understand over here? We have one primer for the PCR. It is complementary to a sequence within the cloned bacteria or the synthetic DNA sequence of the integrating vector. The other primer is complementary to a DNA sequence that is part of the chromosome adjacent to the region of one of the homologous block of the DNA. So if you carefully go through the figure, you will understand that if integration is at random site, then the predicted amplified DNA product will not be synthesized. If specific integration occurs, then the PCR amplifies a DNA fragment of known size. Right. So embryonic stem cells carrying an integrated transgene can be cultured and inserted into blastocyst stage embryos, and these embryos can be implanted into pseudo-pregnant foster mothers. So from those progeny in which the genetically engineered embryonic stem cells have contributed in the formation of germline cells, the transgenic lines can be established. How do you do that? By first mating founder transgenic mice to animals from the same strain and then crossing transgenic litter mates to create transgenic mice that are homozygous for the transgene. Clear? So these are the important procedures that are used with respect to establishing a transgenic mice using the embryonic stem cell method. Now moving on to the application side, I will give some 3-4 examples as part of the transgenic animals or the application of transgenic animals. To begin with, it's about the transgenic mice, because we see this transgenic mice which is used both as a model system for human diseases and to determine the test cases can be determined with any number of animals that are or that can be produced. That means it is easy to get the data. So that is the reason why it is used as a model system for most of the human diseases. And whole animal models stimulate both the onset as well as the progress of the diseases, especially the human diseases. And it provides a system for testing potential therapeutic agents or the drugs. But what we have to remember over here is mouse is not a human. Even though it is a mammal, it is not a human. So the information that is gathered from a transgenic models, within quotes, in some cases may not be medically or clinically relevant. Is that clear? Since though it is a mammal, since it is not human, the information what we gather or the research data what we gather from the studies which include transgenic models, the mice models, in some cases may not be medically or clinically relevant. But in other instances, the critical insights about the etiology of a complex disease can be studied. And with this approach, the mouse models for human genetic diseases, say for example, the Alzheimer's disease, arthritis, muscular dystrophy, tumorigenesis, hypertension, and the neurodegenerative disorders, endocrinal or endocrinological dysfunctions, coronary diseases, and many others have been developed. Right. Though it is not humans, sometimes the data cannot be or may not be relevant, cannot be directly taken or and translate into the human research, but still it is supposed to be a good model for several genetic diseases, as I mentioned. Next, we have the transgenic cattle, and if you just look at a flow chart is given over here, these are some of the steps that are or that is carried out in the development of a transgenic cattle. And as you all know, the mammary glands are used as bioreactors, and the dairy cattle, which produces approximately 10,000 liters of milk per year, which amount to 35 grams protein per liter. So these forms the basis or the likely candidates, that means the cattle, for carrying out the transgenesis. That means the mammary glands serve as bioreactors, and the dairy cattle, that is the milk that they produce, the amount of protein, that is approximately 35 grams per liter, makes these cattle an ideal candidates to carry out the process of transgenesis. Right? A modified mouse transgenesis DNA microinjection protocol is in use for the cattle, and if I just brief you the essential steps. First is collecting the oocytes from the slaughterhouse killed cows. Second is in vitro maturation of oocytes. Third is in vitro fertilization with the bull semen, and then centrifugation of the fertilized eggs to concentrate the yolk, that is which in normal eggs prevents the male pronuclei from being readily seen under any of the dissecting microscope. And next we have the microinjection of the input DNA into male pronuclei, in vitro development of embryos, then non-surgical implantation of one embryo into one recipient foster mother in the natural estrus, and finally DNA screening of the offspring for the presence of the transgene. Right. So these are the 8 different essential steps in the development of a transgenic cattle. So in the next session, we will continue with another concept, And to conclude, of course, we have transgenic sheep, goats, and pigs. I have given only two typical examples. And in conclusion, the genetic modification of animals by this rDNA, or what we call the recombinant DNA technology, the research in this area is very vast, and lot of newer methods are being developed, right? So I'll stop my discussion over here. We'll continue in the next session. Thank you very much.